Hi, everyone. I am so excited to see some familiar names. I have missed you all so much. I was texting Miss Mally and saying that I woke up every day after our last class thinking about you and just so excited, looking forward to getting back in touch. So for friends that I am seeing for the first time, hello. And for friends that I'm familiar with, it's great to see your names. I can't wait for today. So I am not at the museum. I'm still teaching and learning from home. Our museum is open to the public, but not so much from the for the staff. Only certain staff members are going in. So that means I got to set up my home a little bit more and we can learn together all through the year. No worries. So I am from, if anyone hasn't met before, my name is Miss Allyson. I work at the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. A crazy long museum name, but we like to put it all up in the title for you to tell you what we do. I'm located in the United States in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. But the museum, what you see behind me right here, is located in University City. So that's right in Philadelphia proper. So we are going to be talking today. I'm going to have us all look at objects and use the chat feature to tell me a little bit more about what you see and learn a little bit more about how art serves a really important function when we're looking thousands of years in the past, the same way as it gives a really important function to today. It explains a lot about what we see, how we interact, and explain the world. So we're going to do that and learn a little bit about kind of how we understand stories and express those stories and find them today. So as always, I am going to share my screen because I made a presentation for you. So make sure you can see that. All right. Now, I just like to make sure that I can have all of your chats because it is my favorite part to talk to all of you. And you know that I will be asking you to tell me things. I'm going to also be asking you to ask questions if you have any questions. And I'll move through that with our time together and we'll answer and ask as you'd like. Okay. So I have two screens looking up. So if you see me looking two different places, it's just to make sure I can see your responses. So what you should all be seeing on the screen is the museum. So like I said, we're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we have lots of great museum and cultural centers here in Philadelphia. Our museum's rather unique because our goal is studying human history. So what that means is we actually try to look through the lens of anthropology. So anthropology means that, it's just a big word that means that we study humans. So we do this through a couple of different ways. Anthropologists, a big understanding and a big part of this field is understanding culture, world cultures, past and present, very present today. So this helps us understand sets of behaviors that connect a group of people, which helps us understand more about anyone from around the world, their history and today. We also have what's called linguistic anthropology. What that means is understanding, studying, and celebrating languages from all over the world. And in some cases in our museum, we actually have individuals that study language that are 10,000 years old. They come in many different, relate to many different areas, many different cultures. One, for example, is ancient Mesopotamia. We have archaeologists and anthropologists that study Sumerian and Akkadian languages, which is really exciting. We also, we also here have physical. Physical means understanding body, how your body is shaped by your environment and how bodies may change over time. And then finally, in the biggest lens we're going to kind of think about today and look through today is archaeology. Now, archaeology means close looking of material culture that was left behind by people thousands of years ago, or up to 50 years ago is really when archaeological time starts. Now, we have real archaeologists that work in the Penn Museum, and they actually travel the world. They participate in big digs called excavations. Now, these big digs help reveal the past. It helps us reveal ancient cities. It helps us reveal ancient objects. And now the goal, remember, isn't just to find an object or find a city or a building. The goal is really for us to connect to the people that use those objects, created those objects, to better understand how they interacted with the world, okay? So that's just a little bit of a background. So I see that some people are asking a little bit about kind of asking what we're doing here. So since some of you may have never visited us here at the Penn Museum, what we like to do is make sure you know a little bit about the work we do, how we have our objects and why, because we have objects that are from all over the world. There is a question about this. So I'm going to take a moment here in the chat feature. There's a question about the object here that relates to culture. So culture, this specifically is an exhibition that celebrates De las Muertes, which is the Day of the Dead, and is celebrated quite widely in Mexico. It's a very, very big celebration. If anyone has ever seen the movie Coco, there's a lot of really great and beautiful examples of this celebration. And it's actually really a great example of cultural anthropology, since that movie was created with cultural anthropologists to really help understand and celebrate De las Muertes. If anyone doesn't know about De las Muertes, just really quickly, so nobody thinks it's creepy, since that's what we have in our chat here. Actually, what happens is this is a celebration of those that have moved to the afterlife, to the next life, and are no longer here on Earth. Every year, altars are built with pictures and representations of favorite foods, activities, decorations that would have filled the home and celebrate the lives of the family members and friends that are no longer on Earth. So that's something that we celebrate in our museum. We invite members of our community to come in and set up their altars in our space to help make sure we can help them celebrate their family as they'd like to. So just a little bit of an understanding. So hopefully now everybody understands a little bit more about what this image is. Okay, so remember, that's our goal, is to not only celebrate cultures, but understand them by looking to the past. Now, the Penn Museum actually has objects from all over the world, all over the globe. We have them from ancient Mesopotamia to Africa. We have objects from Europe, where we're going to be spending some time, and also objects from North America, right, where we're all located. Now, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about stories and how those stories relate to our artwork, okay? So can you guys give me that event in the event chat, which you guys are doing a great job using? Can you give me some examples of places you find your stories? Where do you find stories that you may be entertained? Where do you find stories that maybe are related to nonfiction stories? Where are stories that you find that might be fictional stories? Can you give me some examples? Okay, great. I'll read them out. So I see Charlie. We have Charlie. Yay! Hi, guys. We have an example of a library, sometimes homes. We have grandparents as a great example. We have, Wesley, I'm a little bit, can you explain a little bit more about your comment? So we have some examples of libraries, which is a great place where you can find books, maybe magazines, articles. You could even find objects at your home that could tell stories, right? In grandparents. I love it. Good job, guys. Or you could write them, right? Maybe. Okay, so I like to say you guys you hit a lot of the same things that I think about when I think of stories, right? I think about the idea of how stories are told to me, how there are a lot of opportunities. We have our friends here saying grandparents. We have some friends also coming in that's saying lots of stories about history places. That's wonderful. So I love being told stories, because to me, conversation is the best way to have an education, especially when we're thinking about people that we're just meeting, or how we're going to learn more about someone that we're just meeting, or a new place that we might be exploring. We might also find our stories in news articles. We might find them in libraries, like what we were told. And in some cases, what we find is that how we look to stories, our written down stories, they're not very different than what people were doing thousands of years ago in the past. They were writing stories for entertainment, documenting history, and also trying to collect the stories that were being passed down through speaking, okay? So let's just show a couple examples of how we have understandings of past and present storytelling through objects, okay? So right here, we have a clay tablet from our Mesopotamia collection. This here is the first written example of this epic story of Gilgamesh. Now, Gilgamesh has been translated many, many different ways into many different forms of written history. So it became an adult book as well as a children's book, like what you see here, this cover. We also have examples in gaming. So some of you guys know me well. You guys know I'm a huge gamer. I tell you a lot about how I wrote my entire master's thesis about how video games can bring education. So check this out. Last night, I actually went and played Origins, which is in the Assassin's Creed series, one of my favorite game series, and what I wrote a lot about. And you can see right here on my screen, this is a screen grab, okay? So this screen grab is an example of how people that created this video game actually used objects like what you see right here, and an example right here that's in the Penn Museum's collection to recreate these digital environments that you can actually walk through. Another example of how we can learn from our objects, okay? Now, the other thing that we see is what we're going to be focusing on is, in some cases, once people started really connecting, getting bigger and bigger societies, they started using pictures, one single pictures with symbolism to help understand or pass down stories. So we're going to be looking at myths today, specifically some Greek myths, and explaining how these Greek pots that we're going to be looking at kind of are similar to the comic books that you might enjoy today, or the graphic novels. I have some graphic novels that I really like jumping into, okay? So now let's see. We have an example here of Hercules. Does anyone in the event chat, can you tell me, does anyone know the myth of Hercules? Give me some examples of what you know about Hercules, or Heracles, if you wanted to pronounce it in a different ways. So let's see. Does anyone know anything about okay, great. So we have some friends saying that it's a half god, that he's really strong, great, that he did do some things to his family. Unfortunately, within his myth, he had to pay for that as well, right? That's exactly, actually, Charlie, really great. And he's a legend, right? He has a variety of legends. And I love that you say that, Charlie, because right here, that's why I picked the 12 labors. Hercules, he may have been half god, but he was what we call like a demigod, right? So he wasn't fully god, but he had god-like strength. And he does have 12 different labors he has to walk through because of what he did to his family. Now, I don't know if any of you knew, but in that 12 layer, in those 12 specific labors, he does actually have to battle a lion. So you might have read about this in comic books. You may have watched a movie about it. Actually, in a Disney movie, you can actually see Hercules kind of being painted with this specific lion's head on it, what you can see here. Now, as we go through in Greek, when we look at our Greek pottery, especially as archaeologists, we actually use the understanding of Hercules myth and many Greek gods and other gods in different cultures, of course. We use these symbols to help us pick out and understand who these specific images are, okay? So you can see here, not only did he battle this lion, but Hercules then starts being put on pots using that lion's head. That's a really great way for people that don't know how to read and write. They can understand what this story is telling them, the same way maybe in a comic book. So we're going to go to ancient Greece. Go ahead and tell me, if I am an archaeologist and I wanted to understand more about how people lived in ancient Greece, where would I go? Go ahead and tell me in the event chat where I would go. It looks like some of our friends are trying to pass some mythology examples back and forth. Europe, good job. So we would go to Europe. Now, I like to box in the Mediterranean because typically people think of Greece and they also think of Rome. They kind of put them together, right? Now, what's really fun is Greece actually really influences Rome, and we're going to see that a lot today, okay? Now, if you guys wanted to, you could go here, you could explore. This is very much a modern city, but we're not super interested in ancient Rome. Eventually, we see how the Greeks influenced them, but what we really want to do is understand how, just like in ancient Rome, what you see in this pictures, ancient Greeks, guess what? They were the ones that created the Olympic Games, right? So they have big sporting matches like what we see amphitheaters created in. They also started entertaining individuals through plays, through big events that were hosted in things that were kind of building up to be these Colosseum, okay? But ancient Greece is really focused in this one specific area, okay? So it's really deep within to the Mediterranean. Now, what you see here is a better example of what ancient Greece is, okay? So where in the world we are is a great way to understand what an object means, okay? So here we have a variety of Greek pots, all taken from areas around this world, around this area. Can you guys use the event chat and tell me, what do you see in these pots? What's similar? What's different? You can name, even if you can make out any of what you're seeing, go ahead and give me some suggestions of what you think they may be. Great. So we see pictures, we see horses. Great. So what types of pictures? We see pictures, horses, we see people, we see a chariot. Very good. Okay, so we have horses, people, chariot. We have some individuals that are talking about maybe hats, maybe there's tools. What about the pots themselves? Can you describe not just what you're seeing being painted on them? I kind of just gave you something, right? So we're seeing pigment. What else do we see that might be similar about the basic features of these pots? So outside of the design, what else do we see? Great, very good, Charlie. So thinking about the shape, right? So we have the idea of this being kind of rounded. They're absolutely rounded. They have attachments, which we definitely can call as handles. Really great. There's narrow tops, absolutely. Good, you guys, really good job. One has a lid, very good. There's similarities maybe in the bottom as a suggestion. Very good. And then if anybody, yes. Okay. So there are some, now we're talking a little bit about the differences. So maybe there's some differences is not only in shaping, but maybe even in how wide they are. Very good. And that you also see that some people may be talking. So we talked about some individuals holding tools. We talked about some individuals on chariots. We talked about the animals we might see, and we see that people are talking. Very good, you guys, so good. So you've named at most things, right? We've talked about the handles and the lids. That's what you call in archaeology attachments, okay? So that's helping us kind of think about the function. You also talked about the images. You guys did a great job in that with all of your suggestions. One thing I always like to point out is the red and black painting here. So red figure and black figure painting is a really important pottery technique. So all of these are actually made of the same material, which is clay. And the way that they are created, thinking about making, is actually so that when they're fired, you can actually bring out different colors on these vases. So when we lead each other here, okay, when we lead each other here, if you wanted to create your own vase, your own kind of image or design on a Greek vase to make your own example, you would want to try to use these specific colors. They didn't really vary too much. Good example. What Wesley called out, very good, and so did our Minotaur. Right here, you can see that this is actually a little bit more yellow as opposed to these being a little bit more red. Very good example. So this is all kind of connected to the making experience, how they're fired, at what temperature, and the type of clay that you're going to be using. So very good, guys. So thinking like archaeologists. Now, what can we learn? You guys, one is the function. So these all served as vessels. So they not only had this decorative element, but they served as vessels. That's why they have those handles you called out. And just like one of our friends mentioned here, one does have a lid. So it can actually be covered. Most often, though, these aren't always found with lids. These are really open. So that's a really nice feature, kind of an enhancement, if you will. And these vessels would hold a great quantity of liquids. And quite often, these liquids would be used at kind of at festivals if there was lots of different people there, or parties, right? And in some cases, they would be used as part of your kind of offerings to your gods and goddesses. Now, under here, I'm really impressed, Charlie. I know that you called it out, talking about the shape, but also the base. I am so impressed because those bases are the same, and that's the stability that you're going to find, okay? So good job. Those are some of the basic features. Now, what you guys did a really great job of is talking about the scenes. That we have these scenes in this specific, each one of the center parts of these vases. And this is really where we can learn a great deal of information, okay? So you guys talked about how people are talking, you talked about tools, you talked about the specific chariot and figures. So I wanna break this down a little bit more. So what we see here, we actually have multiple figures that you can see that are in the lighter shade here. So why that's really important is because when these were being made, remember the material you're making it with and the pigment you're making it with, it all relates to how it's going to be fired. So they would actually use different colors to indicate when females were present. So female gods or females that were important to stories. Now I see that there's lots of different chats going on. So that's great, guys. But I'm going to start giving you some clues that will help us see and make sure that the story of the Minotaur is going to come true. So pay attention to these clues we're giving, okay? So remember that different colors that we're talking about. Now here, you guys were talking a little bit about tools and people speaking, okay? So really great. I know I've met some of you guys and we've talked about a house in ancient Rome, and we talked about the big space called triclinium. Now what you see in the center of this specific vase here is actually two individuals that were attending a symposium. A symposium is a big party where learned men were invited to a really fancy home, and they would have like this big party where there would be music, great food, and it would all happen in that triclinium space. So this is an example of how we can use what we find on a piece of pottery to confirm the use of an actual space in someone's house. So if you guys have ever taken time to draw a picture or snap a photo and post it on your social media, right? Inside your home, inside a space in your home, that's something that could help someone in the future understand how that specific area in your home was used in 2020. So right here, though, we can learn a little bit more about our myths. So we talked already about Hercules. We talked about how he battled that lion. I don't know what just happened there, but we're going to focus right here on the hero that's in this picture. So tell me right here, using that specific event chat, tell me, what do you see happening in this scene here? After you give me some examples of what you see, we'll break this down and connect it to a specific myth. Okay, so Gabby, yes, so it might be a fight that we're seeing. I love it. So there's definitely some type of action going on. Anybody else have a suggestion? There is a crack, very good. So I love that you notice that there are cracks in archaeology. Absolutely, we do find objects that are broken. This right here, everyone, is what we call a fill. If we don't have that piece, we're not going to add any information. So that's just something that helps maintain the structure of the object. And then it's very old. Okay, great. So we see some type of battle scene. We see that there is some type of movement, maybe even some strangling. I can see that with the hand right here happening. We also see that this is an older pottery, so we know that it's a real, true ancient artifact. And we see that there's some fill, right? So very good, everybody. Oh, Charlie, I like that example. And I like that idea of wrestling too. So very good. That's actually really something that you see a lot in the vases, right? So this is going to tell us a little bit about the story of the Minotaur. So since I see some friends are really into the Minotaur, and I've met with some of you who suggested I should make a Lego out of Minotaur, and I couldn't do that before I met you today, and I really wish I did. I'm just still trying to figure out my Lego blocks. But tell me what you already know about this idea of a mythical creature, a Minotaur. And can you also give me some examples of some of the myths that you might know around this Minotaur? What do you already know about a Minotaur? Yes, okay, Charlie. So we have a suggestion that it might be a hybrid creature, bull and man. I can make a, oh, that's very good. Somebody's talking about what they made with their Legos. So very good. So I call, I call a Minotaur kind of a hybrid creature. So you definitely have an element of an animal. You definitely have an element of a human. It's really tall, very good. There's also very, very good. We also have Gabby saying that it might be very strong, very good. Okay, so we see that we know a little bit about the Minotaur, but maybe not so much about the myth of the Minotaur. So I'm going to let you guys know all about that. So now is just a little bit of storytelling. Okay, everybody? Now, and he is not nice. Very good. All right. So here is the story. So there once was this creature in ancient Greece. There was this belief that there was this creature that lived on the island of Crete. Okay. So remember, we're kind of zooming into that one area. Now, Crete lives in the Aegean Sea, right here. It's a pretty big island, and it had relationships with these cities you see up here. But one specific story you have is that in ancient Crete, they believe that there was a Minotaur. Now, they believe that this Minotaur was half bull and half man. Okay, they actually believed that this Minotaur had to be satisfied every single solitary year. It had a specific taste for specific types of people, and only way that the island of Crete would be satisfied, this Minotaur would stay where it needed to be. It would make sure that they would have this kind of agreement with another ancient city. Okay, now what's funny is the king of this specific Crete, King Minos, if you didn't hear that, Minos meaning minnow, right? So Minotaur meaning bull, actually had a daughter. The daughter is said to be the mother of this Minotaur, okay? The bull, the half bull, half human creature. Now, does anyone know where this Minotaur had to live on the island of Crete? You can give me some suggestions in the chat. In caves, very good suggestion. Very, very good suggestions. So in caves is a good suggestion. We also know that what it is called is not just one type of cave. It's actually a labyrinth. So very good, Charlie, explaining that it's not just a cave, it's a series of mazes. So a labyrinth is a really, really tricky place. So tricky that it's not the easiest place to get in and get out of. So the Minotaur is kind of saved from himself and from others in this one specific area. The Minotaur has to sit in the middle of this maze, okay? Now, how do you think this would make people feel? Okay, well, actually, I should tell you a little something first. I don't know why that slide was there. There is this one specific city, Athens. And in Athens, they make an agreement, the two kings, the two rulers. They say, listen, every single year, the best way for you to make sure the Minotaur is satisfied is that you have to send us 7 girls and 7 boys to appease the appetite of this Minotaur. Yes, it sounds very Hunger Games, right? It is not the best idea, but for everyone, they just keep doing this, which is is not awesome. It's kind of like not the best type of form, but hey, ancient myths, right? Now, there is this prince, right, in Athens, and he's like kind of a hero. He's Theseus, and Theseus is like, listen, I do not think that this is a fair trade. Why are we sending 14 Athenian children over here to satisfy this creature in Crete? So what he says is, listen, Dad, to his king who made this crazy agreement and making sure it keeps happening. He says, listen, I'm done with this. I'm going to head over to Crete, and I think we battle this creature. I'm going to try to take down this Minotaur. No more are we going to send our children over there. This is no longer something that we want to do. So his dad says, listen, this kind of freaks me out. I'm a little bit nervous. I don't want you going over there because so many different things could happen. So let's make a deal. I want to make sure to be prepared for what's to happen. You're going to have to take this long journey. Now, this is a center panel of a mosaic, okay, at the Penn Museum. Some of us have talked about before. Now, in this mosaic tells a little bit more of the story. His dad basically says, listen, Theseus, if you're going to go there, I need to make sure I know who's coming back as you travel over the sea, because I can see, where the ship is. It gives me time to plan over here. So if you are unsuccessful, you must have your team turn your sail to a gray side. That will help everyone in Athens know, Theseus, that you haven't defeated this Minotaur. If you put it on a white sail, though, I'll know you're victorious. I'll know you have been victorious. So with this in place, Theseus sails off. He says, bye, Athens. I'm going to go over to Crete. I'm going to make sure we no longer have to worry about what's happening with this Minotaur. Okay. So he gets there, and guess what happens? Does anyone know what happens when he gets to our island of Crete? Okay, so some people are saying no. I always like to guess because I know some of you guys are really into gods and goddesses. So he meets this beautiful princess, and her name is Ariadne. And Ariadne falls madly in love with Theseus, you know, in the one, and maybe like the 2 days they get to know each other during a huge big feast, right? So she says, listen, I'm going to tell you the secret, okay? The reason nobody's ever been able to slay this Minotaur is basically because they can't get there. They have this really, really, really big labyrinth that you have to walk through. So she wants to give Theseus a way to make sure he can sail through that maze, that complicated maze, with to be able to slay the Minotaur, but also get themselves out, because that's the hardest part. So give me some examples. If you had to sail in a boat through a variety of caves that are set up in a really, really intricate, windy maze, what are some strategies or some materials you could use to help guide your way back? Does anyone want to give me some suggestions? Some people are saying, nope, you wouldn't do that. Oh, that's really good. So you could do some light, you could do string, you could put marks on the wall. I like that. Absolutely. Okay, great. So somebody may have seen that I advanced a little bit sooner. So what the myth says is that she absolutely says, here is string. You're going to have to enter into this labyrinth. And with this ball of entrance into this labyrinth is actually a door. Please place a little tie of that string, and as you travel through each space, we are going to want to see, you'll be able to lay that string like a line of breadcrumbs, and every space and every corner, every single area you have to move through, that specific string will drop, and you will eventually make your way through the maze. Now, if you guys haven't noticed, are you guys noticing something here? There is a little bit of a system to this maze. Does anyone want to give me an example of what you're seeing? I'm going to keep going. So this red string is Theseus moving through these dark caves that is at the bottom of the kingdom that he is visiting, right? To slay this Minotaur. Does anybody notice anything I have to do with this string? It's kind of the whole point of the labyrinth. Because a labyrinth isn't just a maze with something sitting in the center. A labyrinth requires every single, yes, very good. So you have to go in every square, very good. And it's making a zigzag, right? So the labyrinth requires you to go through every single corner of the maze before you meet your destination, which would be where Theseus eventually meets the Minotaur, half bull, the head of the bull, and the body of a human. And you guys are correct. In this myth, this Minotaur, guess what? He is extremely strong. He is a very, very intense beast. But Theseus eventually will take the Minotaur, and he's going to slay the Minotaur. Who do you guys think is going to win? Do you think it's going to be Theseus, or do you guys think it's going to be the Minotaur? Who do you think will eventually be victor? Do you think they're going to have to keep sending Athenians? Okay, so we have some friends coming in. They're saying not the Minotaur. They're saying Theseus. You guys, let's see who will battle. They go back and forth. It's always big, and then eventually Theseus slays that Minotaur. This is another example of a mosaic you see on the floor. Again, you can see all of that labyrinth around with the big battle scene in the middle. And yes, you are correct, my friends. The Minotaur is not the victor. Instead, it is, in fact, Theseus. So here's the thing, though. Check it out. Right here, we have a picture of Theseus sailing back. Does anybody notice anything that Theseus didn't do right there on due on his sail back. Can anyone make that out? Yes, very good. So right here, he didn't turn the flag for it to be white, right? So what happens is, instead of that sail being white, meaning victory, which Theseus was in fact victorious, instead he's kept it on that gray mourning sign. So when his father sees this, who's waiting up in the Acropolis, which basically means the center of Athens, he sees this, and unfortunately he thinks the worst has happened, and he does not think it's going to be a pleasant return home, and his father ends up meeting an untimely end. But funny enough, there are two people in this, but Theseus, he never really brought Ariadne back home. He dropped her off in an island after he defeated the Minotaur on his way home. But what is really fun is that if we take another look at this scene again, this is actually a scene of Theseus and the Minotaur. We had talked earlier about the battle that was occurring. Can you guys look here and tell me, do you feel like in this scene, in this one piece of pottery that we've looked closely at, do you think that this is evidence? Do you think we have good evidence all of our characters are represented? Can you tell me what characters you might see, or some of the examples of the myth that you might see in this scene? Don't worry about spelling. I have no problem with, I never think spelling is a big deal. We can always talk about that. Very good. Okay, so Gabby, I'm so impressed. So we definitely do maybe have a suggestion of seeing our Ariadne. We have a suggestion that the Minotaur is looking small, absolutely. And that's a really good example. Does anybody want to tell me what's the reminder of Ariadne? Why do we know that that's Ariadne? Oh, okay, so we see the gruel, we see the big bull, the bull here. And Ariadne we see because of that different technique of painting, right? So very, very good, guys. We definitely see the battle scene. And Charlie, I'm really impressed that you brought out how it's small, right? Now, in one situation that we can look at here is Theseus in this myth is supposed to be the hero. He is the one that's going to be the victor. So when we're looking into artwork, in some cases, not everyone, well, especially now, not everyone is able to read and write when we're looking in the ancient Greek world. So certain artistic techniques that they would use aren't just the symbolism we talked about, but it's also the sizing of individuals. So if you had a really important person like a hero, or the person like Zeus, the highest god, or the emperor, they're usually put in a really big format where the individuals that they would be, like in this example, the bull here, that they would be conquering, they would be put on a smaller scale. Very good, very, very good. And yes, very good. We also have our example right here of our lady figure who is painted in a different shade, helping us connect to that understanding of Ariadne being a part of that story, even if she didn't return home to Athens with them. And then what we see here is just a little bit of an example I just wanted to show you of the mosaics. Theseus is a really, really big myth in ancient Greece, and we see this even continue into ancient Rome. Greek gods and these examples of how they use pottery to tell stories don't stop. We start to see that these stories and the symbolism used are elevated into public artworks, and in a lot of times even mosaics that are found in public buildings, private buildings. And this example here is an example of something that was found on the tomb of an ancient Roman. So this would be in the Roman Empire. And I like this one here because you can see the entrance of the labyrinth, which we didn't have in the mosaic before. So that is kind of the end of our time, or the end of my specific, I want to stop sharing my screen, our presentation today, but I do always like to take time for questions. So I try to answer questions if they come up in the chat, but I think that they were all answered. So if anybody has any questions for me about the Penn Museum, what we talked about today, more about Greek pottery, or more about kind of this type of artwork, I'm more than happy to answer. So good question. So Charlie said, why 7 boys and 7 girls? You know, it the number I can't speak honestly about the specifics of 14, but the idea of an even distribution of girls and boys were definitely an important component of this myth. It specifically is a connection to the taste. What would happen for 14 for this whole year to go by prior to this Minotaur, for this snack of the Minotaur, unfortunately. So a way of kind of keeping everybody happy. But there was supposed to be this even distribution. There's a part of me that also thinks sometimes it connects a little bit to the myth of Persephone, which is the idea of going underground to be the wife of Hades for 7 months and then coming up and having the rebirth with her mother, Mother Nature. But I can't confirm that. The one thing I do think is really fun is if you look at the castle of on this ancient island of Crete, you actually do see this labyrinth, this very serious series of mazes with a very central point. It wasn't that the bull was actually a bull half man was living there. It just is an interesting connection to a building kind of representing the story as well. Is there any other questions you guys might have? Typically, we do a little bit of a drawing activity, but I thought since we were meeting today and we wanted to dive into kind of the storytelling of the Greek pottery, so next time we see each other, I'll make sure to do one of our makings.
Yeah, that was really fun, and I just love how the students know so much about ancient civilizations, and they just from reading and doing those amazing observations. So if you might be seeing some of those objects from around just around your community or around your house, you might see something drawn and you can take a look and say, gee, what story can that tell? So that was, yeah.
I also was thinking, so if anybody, so I like comic books as well. So what I always like to do is try to challenge myself in telling one part of my day through one picture. And that's really what this is. It's the idea of showing a variety of scenes. So people don't have the same, people then didn't have the same opportunities that we may have to be able to look on a digital comic book or digital media. But what they, or even go to a library and grab a book, but what they did have were these centralized stories. So once artisans knew how to draw those stories, what you would be able to do is have a variety of these pots. And these pots were not just for those that were of the highest classes. Instead, those might have personalized pottery, but especially when we're looking at the gods, these were distributed to whomever would be able to go in and purchase something to decorate their home or a vessel they might need for washing or drinking.
Okay, so thanks, boys and girls, for coming. I'm really excited about always connecting with Miss Allyson. It's just like we just get so excited when we know that we're going to see one another and be able to share stories and learn about being archaeologists and what that means. So this afternoon, if you can go and find your rock, we're going to be doing just a couple of styles of rock painting. You can get more than one if you want.
Oh, that looks so good.
You might need some paint that the students from Rainy River have. But we will see you this afternoon. Go outside, have a great time, and thank you so much, as always, Miss Allyson. We just love playing with you.
Oh, thank you. Bye, everyone. It was great to see everyone.
Bye,
Thank you so much. Bye.